Korean Mafia boss found his black maid crying in the closet. His next move changed everything. The first thing Amani noticed was the smell of gun oil. It cut through the soft lavender polish she'd used on the marble floors barely an hour earlier. Sharp, metallic, unmistakable. The second thing was the sound of her own breathing, uneven and far too loud in a house where silence was currency and mistakes were paid for in blood. She pressed her forehead to her knees and closed her eyes. Don't cry. Not here. Never here. But the sob escaped anyway, tearing out of her chest before she could stop it. She clamped her hand over her mouth, shoulders shaking, body folded between suits that cost more than her entire life. The walk-in closet was vast, dimly lit, lined with perfectly spaced garments, black, charcoal, midnight blue, silken wool, power-tailored into fabric. The scent of cologne lingered beneath the gun oil, dark and restrained. This was the only place she had dared to hide, because no one ever came here unless he did. And when Park Jin-suk came anywhere, the house knew it. Amani dragged a breath, forcing the tears back, but her chest burned. Her phone vibrated in her apron pocket again, phantom-like. She didn't take it out. She already knew what it would say, or who it would be from. They know where you work now. Her reflection stared back at her from the mirrored panel, dark skin blotchy with tears, eyes red-rimmed, braids slipping loose from the bun she'd redone twice this morning. She looked smaller than she felt, folded inward, like a woman trying to take up less space in a world that had never made room for her. She had learned that skill early. Amani had scrubbed floors in places like this before, had learned how to lower her eyes, how to become invisible. She knew how to exist quietly around dangerous men, how to hear gunshots from behind closed doors, and keep polishing until the blood dried. She knew the rules, but fear didn't care about rules. The closet door opened. Light spilled in. Amani froze. The house seemed to hold its breath with her. Footsteps, measured, unhurried, crossed the marble threshold. The faint rustle of expensive fabric. The weight of presence so heavy it bent the air. She didn't need to look up. Park Jin-suk. Her muscles locked, panic flashing hot and sharp through her veins. She scrambled to her feet too fast, nearly stumbling, wiping her face with the back of her hand. I'm sorry, she said quickly, voice breaking despite her effort. I was just cleaning. I'll go. I didn't mean to. Stay. One word. Calm. Controlled. It stopped her cold. She swallowed and lifted her gaze. He stood framed in the doorway like a shadow carved into human shape. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Dressed in black so perfectly tailored it looked like armor. His hair was swept back, revealing sharp cheekbones and a face disciplined into neutrality. But his eyes, dark, assessing, unreadable, pinned her in place. She had seen him before, always at a distance, at the head of long tables, surrounded by men who laughed too loudly, stepping out of black cars while guards scanned rooftops, giving orders that were obeyed instantly, without question. She had never been this close, and she had never been seen by him like this. His gaze moved over her with unsettling precision, not lingering, not invasive, taking in the tremor in her hands, the tear tracks she hadn't wiped away properly, the way her shoulders curved inward as if bracing for impact. Something flickered behind his eyes, gone before she could name it. What happened? He asked. The question stunned her. No one here asked questions like that. Amani shook her head quickly. Nothing, sir. I apologize. I don't usually. This won't happen again. She stepped toward the door, heart racing. He moved first. His hand braced against the frame, blocking her exit without touching her. He didn't need to. His presence filled the space, controlled and absolute. I didn't tell you to leave, he said. Her breath hitched. Fear prickled along her spine, but beneath it was something else. Confusion. Because his voice wasn't angry. There was no threat in it. Just authority. And something unfamiliar. Concern. I don't cry at work, she said too fast. I'm professional. I swear. I'm not questioning your competence. That made her look at him again. His expression hadn't softened, but the sharp edge had dulled. His attention was fully on her now, undivided. You're hiding in my closet, he continued. That suggests more than exhaustion. She hesitated. Truth was dangerous. Lies were safer. But something about the way he waited, silent, immovable, made lying feel useless. I received a call, she said quietly. Someone from my past. His eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. Explain. She took a breath. The house suddenly too large, too quiet. My ex-boyfriend. He was involved with people who don't let go. I left. Changed jobs. Tried to disappear. Her voice shook. He said they know where I am. Silence stretched. Jin Suk absorbed the information without visible reaction. His mind moved quickly, cataloging details. The way she said they, not he. The practiced fear of someone who had learned consequences the hard way. Did he threaten you? He asked. Yes. How? She swallowed. He said accidents happen to women who forget their place. The air shifted. Amani felt it before she saw it. The tightening of his jaw. The barely contained darkness that passed through his eyes like a storm behind glass. Who is he? Jin Suk asked. I don't think. Who? The word left no room for negotiation. She gave the name. Recognition flickered across his face, brief and cold. A small man. A careless one. Do you have family nearby? He asked. No. Anyone who knows you work here? No. Another pause. Amani waited for dismissal, for indifference, for the cold calculation that would decide she was a liability. Instead, he said, You will not leave the mansion tonight. Her eyes widened. Sir, you will remain here until I decide otherwise. I don't understand. You're afraid, he said simply, and someone thinks they can reach you through me. She frowned. Through you. Anyone who threatens someone under my roof challenges my authority. It took a moment for his words to sink in. Protection. Not kindness, power. I don't want to cause trouble, she said carefully. You didn't. He turned and walked down the hall. After a second's hesitation, she followed. They passed guards who stiffened when they saw her beside him. She felt exposed, visible in a way that made her skin prickle. This was not where she belonged. They stopped at a door in the west wing. This room is vacant, he said. You'll stay here. Her breath caught. This is a guest suite. Yes. I can't. You can. She looked up at him, disbelief battling fear. Why are you doing this? For a moment, he didn't answer. Then quietly, because crying in closets is inefficient. The absurdity startled a weak laugh out of her before she could stop it. She clapped a hand over her mouth, mortified. He didn't reprimand her. The corner of his mouth twitched, barely there, then gone. Rest, he said. We'll speak tomorrow. When the door closed behind him, Amani sank onto the bed, heart racing. She didn't know what frightened her more, that someone dangerous wanted to hurt her, or that the most dangerous man she had ever met had decided she was worth keeping close. And deep in the mansion, Park Jin-suk made a phone call that began a quiet war. Amani didn't sleep. She lay on the edge of the massive guest bed, hands folded tightly over her stomach, listening to the unfamiliar quiet. The mattress was too soft, the ceiling too high. The room smelled faintly of cedar and something masculine she couldn't name. Protection had never looked like this before. Every sound made her tense. The hum of security outside, distant footsteps, the low murmur of voices traveling through vents. She was acutely aware of where she was, of whose space this was. She rose before dawn, showered quickly, and dressed in the plain black uniform she'd worn the day before. Habit pulled her toward the service wing, toward invisibility. She made it halfway down the corridor before a voice stopped her. Where are you going? She turned. Park Jin-suk stood at the end of the hall, already dressed, coat draped neatly over his arm. He looked as composed as ever, as if closets and tears and midnight decisions hadn't happened at all. To work, she said automatically. His gaze lingered on her uniform. You're not on duty today. Her brow creased. I don't understand. You're not cleaning today. Her pulse quickened. Did I do something wrong? No. Then, you're a guest, he said. For now. The word landed heavily between them. I can't just stop working, she said. That's my job. And your job puts you in predictable places. he replied. Until this situation is resolved, predictability is a weakness. She stared at him, stunned. So what am I supposed to do? Stay close. The implication made her throat tighten. He seemed to sense it. In public areas. With staff. With security. He gestured down the opposite corridor. Breakfast is served in the east dining room. I usually eat in the kitchen. You won't today. The room was quiet except for the ticking of a distant clock. Amani squared her shoulders. Sir, I appreciate what you're doing. Truly. But this feels excessive. His eyes held her steadily. You were threatened. Yes, but I'm not important. That did something. His gaze sharpened, jaw setting. Importance is not determined by who has power over you. She swallowed. You will eat, he continued. You will remain visible, and you will tell me immediately if anything feels wrong. She hesitated. Is this an order? It's protection. The distinction mattered more than he knew. She nodded slowly. All right. The dining room was nothing like the kitchen. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating a table set with quiet luxury. A man sat near the far end, older, Korean, with a composed expression and watchful eyes. This is Mr. Han, Jin-suk said, my chief of security. Han inclined his head politely. Miss Amani. She stiffened. You know my name? Of course, Han replied mildly. We know everyone's name. Comforting. Terrifying. Breakfast passed in near silence. Amani focused on the food, though she tasted little. She was hyper-aware of Jin-suk's presence across from her, how he read reports on his tablet, how people deferred to him without question. This was his world. After breakfast, he stood. Come with me. She followed again, this time less reluctantly. They moved through the mansion into a private office overlooking the gardens. He gestured for her to sit. You said your ex contacted you. He began. When? Last night. And once before. 2 weeks ago. I ignored it. Did he know where you worked then? No. Jin-suk nodded. That means someone told him. Her stomach dropped. Someone here. Possibly. Or someone followed you. She wrapped her arms around herself. I tried so hard to disappear. I know. She looked up sharply. You do. You don't draw attention to yourself, he said. You work quietly. Efficiently. You don't gossip. You don't linger. It startled her, being seen so clearly. I didn't have a choice, she said softly. Where I come from, being noticed gets you hurt. His eyes darkened, something old and familiar passing through them. Then we have that in common, he said. She studied him, surprised by the admission. He leaned back slightly. Until this is resolved, you will stay in the West Wing. Mr. Han will assign someone to escort you if you leave the mansion. That feels like house arrest. His lips pressed into a thin line. If I wanted to confine you, you wouldn't have a choice. The bluntness sent a shiver through her. But you do, he continued. You're free to leave. I won't stop you. She met his gaze. Would that be safe? No. The honesty settled the matter. Days passed. Amani adjusted slowly, awkwardly, to her new position, neither staff nor guest. She spent hours in the library, reading books she'd never imagined touching. She took walks in the garden with guards at a discreet distance. Jin-suk watched from afar. He noticed how she flinched at raised voices, how she relaxed around children when a cook's son visited the kitchen, how she carried herself with quiet dignity even when uncertain. And she noticed him, how he never raised his voice, how men twice her size leaned in to hear him speak, how he paused before making decisions, weighing consequences with surgical precision. One afternoon, voices drifted through the open doors of the study. Why is she still here? A man demanded. She's a liability. Amani froze in the hallway. She's under my protection. Jin-suk replied calmly. For how long? For as long as necessary. A beat. You're risking attention. I decide what risks are acceptable. Amani stepped back silently, heart pounding. That night, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her breath caught. She didn't answer. A second message followed. You think hiding behind him will save you? Fear surged, hot and suffocating. Before she could think, she was on her feet, knocking on Jin-suk's door. He opened it instantly, as if he'd been expecting her. She held out the phone, hands shaking. He read the message, expression darkening. "This ends now," he said. She swallowed. "What are you going to do?" He looked at her, something fierce and protective burning beneath his calm. "I'm going to remind them," he said quietly. "What happens when someone forgets whose house they're standing in?" And for the first time since she arrived, Amani believed, truly believed, that she might survive this. The mansion changed after the message. Amani felt it before anyone said a word. The air tightened, like a held breath that refused to release. Guards doubled at entrances. Doors that were usually left ajar closed with deliberate clicks. Conversations dropped to murmurs when she passed. She had become the reason. Jin-suk didn't hide it. He summoned his lieutenants that night, voices carrying through the stone corridors. Amani didn't hear the words, but she recognized the cadence, controlled, final. Whatever he said ended arguments rather than starting them. When he emerged hours later, his coat was gone, sleeves rolled back slightly, revealing strong forearms marked faintly by old scars. He looked composed, but something sharp burned beneath the calm. "You shouldn't be alone tonight," he said when he found her in the library. She closed the book in her hand slowly. "I'm not afraid of being alone." "I am." The admission caught her off guard. He noticed. "Of what you don't see," he clarified. "Of what you can't prepare for." She nodded. "Then where should I be?" "Here," he said. "With me." He led her not to the guest wing, but to a smaller sitting room adjacent to his private office. A fire burned low in the hearth, casting shadows across the walls. She sat on the edge of the couch, hands folded, posture careful. "You can relax," he said. "I don't know how to do that here." A pause. "Fair." He poured 2 glasses of water instead of wine and handed her one. The choice didn't go unnoticed. "Your ex," he said after a moment. "He didn't find you on his own." Her stomach sank. "You're sure?" "Yes." "Someone here," she whispered. "Someone careless," he replied. "Or someone desperate." She hugged the glass to her chest. "Is it my fault?" He looked at her sharply. "No." The certainty steadied her more than reassurance ever could. "You didn't invite danger," he continued. "Danger followed you because someone thought you were unprotected." Her voice trembled. And now, he said, "they'll learn otherwise." The words should have frightened her. Instead, they felt like shelter. Days blurred together. Amani stayed close to Jin-suk more often than not, sitting quietly during meetings, accompanying him on short walks through secured areas. She learned the rhythm of his world. The early mornings, the endless negotiations, the careful violence implied but rarely shown. She also learned the silences, the way his gaze lingered on her when he thought she wasn't looking, the way his voice softened when he spoke to her alone, the way he positioned himself between her and doors without conscious thought. Protection had become instinct. One afternoon, Mr. Han pulled her aside. "You should know," he said gently, "that remaining here carries risks." "I know. He's made enemies by choosing you." She swallowed. "I never asked him to." Han studied her for a long moment. "No, but you changed something." "How?" "He doesn't protect easily," Han said, "and never personally." The weight of that settled heavily on her shoulders. That night, the danger became real. It happened fast. Amani had just stepped into the courtyard with Jin-suk and 2 guards when the first shot rang out, sharp, unmistakable. She didn't even have time to scream. Jin-suk moved instantly, body slamming into hers, knocking her to the ground as guards shouted and weapons came up. He shielded her with his own body. One arm braced over her head. "Stay down," he commanded, voice iron steady. More shots cracked through the air. Stone chipped nearby. Someone yelled orders in Korean. Her heart pounded violently, fear screaming through her veins. But beneath it was something else, clarity. She wasn't helpless. When a guard went down nearby, Jin-suk's grip tightened briefly. Then he shifted, eyes flicking to her. "When I move," he said lowly, "you crawl to the fountain and stay there. Do you understand?" She nodded, breath ragged. He waited for the next volley, then moved with lethal precision, rolling, firing, commanding. She crawled, hands scraping stone, breath burning in her lungs. She reached the fountain and pressed herself against it, heart hammering as chaos erupted around her. Minutes felt like hours. Then silence. Hands lifted her gently. "You're safe," Jin-suk said. She looked up at him, eyes wide, hands trembling. "You're bleeding," she whispered. "It's not mine." Only later, in the aftermath, did the shaking hit her. She sat on the edge of a bench, arms wrapped around herself, staring blankly ahead. Jin-suk dismissed everyone else. When they were alone, he knelt in front of her. "You did exactly what I told you," he said. "I was terrified. You still moved," he replied. "That matters." Her breath hitched. "They were trying to kill you. They were trying to get to you." She shook her head. "This is too much. I can't be the reason." He took her hands then. Firm. Grounding. "You are not a reason," he said. "You are a person." Tears spilled freely now, no restraint left. "I don't want anyone else to get hurt because of me." His thumbs brushed her knuckles, a rare, intimate gesture. "No one touches what's mine," he said softly. Then, as if realizing the implication, he stilled. The silence that followed was charged, dangerous in a different way. She searched his face. "Did you mean me?" His jaw tightened. "I shouldn't have said that." "But you did." "Yes." Something cracked open between them. "I'm not used to someone choosing me," she admitted. "Not like this." He exhaled slowly. "Neither am I." He stood abruptly, pacing once, then turning back to her. "This is why I don't get close," he said. "Attachment creates weakness." "And yet," she said quietly, "you're still here." He stopped. "So are you," he replied. That night, he insisted she stay in his private wing, not in his room, but close enough that he could hear if she stirred. She lay awake again, but this time not from fear. She thought about his hands on hers, about the way his voice changed when he spoke to her, about how he'd shielded her without hesitation. In the early hours before dawn, a soft knock came at her door. She opened it to find him standing there, coat off, shirt collar undone, expression conflicted. "I need you to understand something," he said quietly. "What's happening isn't temporary anymore." Her heart skipped. "What do you mean?" "They won't stop," he said, "and neither will I." She stepped closer, voice barely above a whisper. "Then what happens to me?" He met her gaze fully, vulnerability bare for the first time. "You stop running," he said, "and I stop pretending this is only about protection." The space between them vanished. He didn't kiss her. Instead, he rested his forehead gently against hers, breath mingling, the intimacy more powerful than any touch. "For now," he murmured, "this is enough." She closed her eyes, letting herself lean into him. Outside, the war continued. But in that moment, neither of them stood alone anymore. The attack changed the rules. Amani felt it in the way the mansion breathed differently afterward. Tense, alert, coiled. No more half measures. No more shadows pretending to be safe. And Jin-suk no longer pretended distance was protection. He didn't say it outright. He didn't need to. His presence became constant, deliberate. He positioned himself closer to her in rooms, reached for doors before she could, checked windows himself instead of delegating. It wasn't possession. It was vigilance sharpened by fear. Fear for her. The night after the shooting, he sat across from her in the private sitting room, sleeves rolled up again, hands clasped loosely as if holding himself together by will alone. "They'll come again," he said. "Soon." Amani nodded. "I know. You should leave," he continued. "I can relocate you. Somewhere far. Safe." She looked at him steadily. "Is that what you want?" His jaw tightened. "No." "Then don't decide for me," she said quietly. He studied her, searching for doubt, finding none. "This isn't bravery," she added. "I'm tired of running." Silence fell between them, heavy and charged. "If you stay," he said finally, "there will be no halfway protection, no deniability. You become part of my world." "I already am," she replied. Something in his eyes broke open. "Then listen to me carefully," he said. If things go wrong, you don't wait for me to save you. She straightened. I won't. You act. You survive. She met his gaze. I always have. That night, the call came. Mr. Han entered without knocking, expression grim. They've located the man coordinating the threats. Jin Suk rose instantly. Where? Warehouse District. He's waiting. Wants to negotiate. Amani stood as well. It's a trap. Yes, Jin Suk agreed. Which is why I'm going. She took a step toward him. Alone. No, his gaze softened briefly. Without you. Her heart clenched. You said I stop running. And I stopped putting you in front of bullets. She took a breath, steadying herself. I'm not asking to fight. I'm asking not to be left behind. The room stilled. You don't understand what that place is, he said. I understand fear, she replied. And I understand what happens when people underestimate me. He searched her face, torn between instinct and reason. Mr. Han cleared his throat. There's another option. They both turned. She could come. Han continued carefully. But not as leverage. As witness. The men targeting her believe she's weak. Unimportant. Amani lifted her chin. Let them. Jin Suk stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded once. Stay close to me, he said. No matter what. The warehouse smelled like rust and oil and old mistakes. Amani's heart pounded as they entered, footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. Jin Suk walked beside her, calm and lethal, his presence anchoring her fear. The man waiting for them smiled too quickly. Boss Park, he said. Didn't think you'd bring the girl. That's your first mistake, Jin Suk replied. The man's gaze slid to Amani, dismissive. She's not worth this. Amani stepped forward. Yes, she said clearly. I am. The surprise on his face was brief, replaced quickly by contempt. You think standing next to him makes you powerful? No, she said. Living through you didn't. The room went quiet. Jin Suk didn't stop her. You threatened me because you thought no one would care, she continued. You thought fear made you strong. She met his eyes, unflinching. You were wrong. The man laughed nervously. This isn't your place. It is, Jin Suk said calmly. Because I say it is. The confrontation ended swiftly after that. Not with chaos, but with certainty. Orders given. Lines drawn. Consequences delivered. When it was over, the warehouse felt hollow. They walked out together into the cold night air. Amani's legs trembled only when it was done. Jin Suk turned to her, hands hovering uncertainly, then settling firmly on her shoulders. You were extraordinary, he said. She let out a shaky breath. I was terrified. Yes, he replied. And you stood anyway. Back at the mansion, the adrenaline faded, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Amani sat on the edge of the bed in Jin Suk's private wing, hands clasped tightly. He stood a few feet away, uncharacteristically hesitant. This ends tonight, he said. The threat. And us, she asked softly. He looked at her then, really looked at her. Not as someone to protect, not as a liability, but as a woman who had chosen him as much as he had chosen her. I don't know how to love safely, he admitted. I only know how to commit completely. She stood and stepped toward him. Then don't do this halfway. He reached for her, hands warm and sure, resting at her waist, not claiming, just present. I can't promise you peace, he said, or simplicity. She smiled faintly. I don't need either. His forehead rested against hers, just as it had before, but this time he didn't pull away. I choose you, he said quietly. The words settled into her like truth. I choose you too, she replied. Months later, the mansion felt different, lighter. Amani moved through it not as staff, not as guest, but as someone who belonged. She still worked, still kept routines, but she was no longer invisible. And Jin Suk changed in ways no one else expected. He laughed more, slept more, let someone see him without armor. On quiet mornings, they shared coffee in the garden. On difficult nights, they sat together in silence, steadying each other. She had stopped hiding in closets. He had stopped hiding behind power. Together, They had built something neither had believed possible. Safety, trust, love, and in a world ruled by fear, that was the most dangerous thing of all. Thank you for listening to Korean Mafia boss found his black maid crying in the closet. His next move changed everything. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support means the world. Until next time, Red Heart.